Hello everybody, how you doing today? It's a new day, it's a fresh day. I hope you're up, shaking and baking. I've got an amazing guest here. I call him the Tiger. In fact, we call him the Tiger. Otega, I won't do my introduction. You are just going to
Oh,
talk about yourself. So, I met
oh,
Otega
really?
a few years ago, and I just said to myself, I said, I must be this guy's friend.
I
And
remember.
this guy is so smart. I said, no, 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 no. I must be this guy's friend. And I'm very grateful for the relationship. And then I said to him, oh, you know what? You've got to come on the podcast today. He's a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Marketing, United Kingdom. He's a strategic communication and marketing and digital. He is currently the SSC to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Otega Ogra, the Tiger. Welcome to the Paul Fu podcast. How are you doing today, brother?
Thank you very much, Paul, for inviting me. I'm glad to be here. Like I said when we were discussing before the podcast started, it's been almost 3 years that you've been asking me to come on this podcast.
Yes.
And some way, our schedules have never really aligned, and I'm
Yeah.
glad I'm finally here. You've done a wonderful job, especially in the area of, building capacity and competence for people, especially in the sales, sector. But there's no sales, like I always say, without communications and marketing. The
Mm,
three things work hand in hand. So we're brothers in the same field. We're, iron sharpeneth iron, like some of the
that's
holy
right.
books say.
Yeah.
And that's the interrelationship between sales, marketing, and communications. Thank you once again for inviting me here. And I hope we'll be able to, pass as much information, quality information to your listeners. And I will hope that I'm able to, come back here some other time to add more value to your podcast.
Great. I mean, you're a person that have worked with brands all over the world. Manufacturing, you have worked with brands all over the world. In what, tell us the power of perception in shaping human behavior. And how it translates to government and how it translates to a business. Why is perception so strong? Why is it so important?
Um, Let me start by saying this well said trope that people always say, which is perception is everything.
Hmm.
Um, do I agree with it? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But for me, the most important thing is perception is an innate emotion
Hmm.
or is an emotional connection with something, that can either make or mar
Hmm.
the way you see something, the way you perceive something, the way you relate with something. It's psychological.
Hmm.
Um, and whatever is psychological is linked to behavior. So perception is very, very strong in the sense that it can affect one's behavior or attitudes towards anything at all. So whether it's business, whether it's a product, whether it's a service, whether it's your interpersonal relationship with one person or the other, perception is extremely key. Which is why people say manage perception, but you
Hmm.
can also manage perception to an extent, and then people are drawn in by the way you've positioned yourself to be perceived, and the results are totally different from what you have put out there for people to perceive you about, and that becomes extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
um I say it's outputs. It's like energy. What you put in is what comes out.
Yeah.
Output must always be equal to whatever you input,
Hmm.
which is whatever you've positioned yourself to be perceived as. If the output is different, then you expect a negative user experience.
Yeah.
And once there's a negative user experience, it goes back again to your emotional feeling, the way people perceive you, the way people feel towards something that you're trying to put out there.
Hmm.
Once there's a disconnect, that negative user experience comes in, and it might not even become much more difficult, to manage perception. So that's how I perceive perception in a nutshell. Um, Whether it's in government, whether it's in business or whatsoever, the frameworks still remain the same. It's about managing people's emotions, managing people's behaviors, managing people's attitudes towards anything. And that's it in a nutshell for me.
Fantastic. You have a very strong personal brand. Very, very strong personal brand. And you've built that over the years. If somebody just Googles your name, a ton of articles, just comes out of Google. why is building a personal brand important? Because today we see even Nigerian billionaires, going on Instagram every single day. Why is shaping your own narrative important?
Okay, I'll start by saying two things. And I need to situate what you first said, which is that I have a very strong personal brand,
Yeah,
because we'll refer to it later on in this conversation. Did I set out, you know, to create a personal brand for myself? I would say no.
that's
I
interesting.
wasn't deliberate, I
That's
was never ever
that's
deliberate
really really interesting to hear.
about creating a personal brand. And I remember when it comes to even my online, footprints,
Yeah.
I used to have a lot of people complain, say that you just post haphazardly. There's no structure to the way you post. But for me, I used to just post then based on how I felt. If I saw something, if I was in a conversation with someone and I felt there was something I needed to push out, that a lot more people could learn from, I'll just post it out there. The way I dress came from childhood. I've always moving into more traditional Nigerian clothing, but I was
Mm.
a man who had loved suits from childhood. My mom, who was a computer scientist, she always had these beautiful jackets that she wore to work. My dad was always in
Yeah, yeah.
suits. So I just learned from them. So I guess, my personal brand was also built from what I
Mm.
was taught as a child, what I was exposed to, the kind of things I was exposed to, and all that. So it's just became
Mm.
innate. And I started to live those things over time, you know. But back to your question, why is a personal brand important? You are what
Mm.
you are perceived as. You know, I
Yeah.
said that you are what you're perceived as.
Hmm.
Before you
Can you say
have
that again?
any
That's deep.
chance, to show what value you can bring to the table, before you have any
Hmm.
chance, you know, to prove yourself, who you truly are, people will judge you, people will relate to you, people will, everything about you will be judged from the perspective of what they view you as. And what they view you as can be from, historical data, what they've seen outside about
Hmm.
you, or even to something as simple as how you're dressed in that moment when they come in contact with you, how you speak, how you hold yourself, your body language. It could be one of many
Yeah.
things, So for me, personal branding is not one thing. It's a series of things which help build a persona that people use to judge who you are. And a lot of people, they miss that. On the second level, you now
Hmm.
move to things that, are more concrete, like authenticity, trustworthiness, all these little things that help you to build a better relationship, whether it's
Yeah.
on an interpersonal level
Yeah.
or at a group level or, in business or whatsoever. So personal branding is that important because, like I said, when you were asking about your first question, it determines, how people relate to you. It determines how you are perceived. It determines if you're going to go to the next phase of anything, in any aspect or sphere of your life. So you must be deliberate about
Hmm.
who you are, how you come off, how, how you interrelate to other people, how you go about things, even when people are not
Hmm.
watching. My first boss when I was working with the German agency for
That's
international
right.
development, 5 projects with them in the Northeast, in the late 2000s, used to tell me one thing. You know, it would say,
Hmm.
Tega, regardless of who is where, just always remember that whatever you're doing, people are watching, even if no one is there. The things you do not do,
Hmm.
how you go about
Come on
everything,
now. Hmm.
there's always someone watching, whether it's in that moment or based on the outcomes. And that will, end up, into a box which they would use to judge you. For me, that is what a personal brand is. What you do, what you do not do, what your own values are, how they play
Hmm.
in getting you to do a lot of things, getting you to react to situations, getting you to do your work with or without eyes on you. That determines how you're finally perceived. and how well, whatever it is you're trying to push out, whether on a personal notes, or a non-personal notes, that's how what determines how, it works. So for me, that's
Oh, fantastic. So that's it. That's very very powerful. Very very powerful. So that means that like some people will say that, oh, nobody's commenting on my stuff on social media, nobody is liking it, and a
exactly
lot of times people buy your product and
exactly.
they've never
And people
commented
also
on it before,
recommend,
they've never messaged
despite
you
the fact that
before, so they've been
they have
watching.
never, you know, they've never ever interacted with you. I
Oh,
would
I
say,
forgot that
you see,
part. They
I'll
recommend.
use an example. One of the,
Hmm.
producers and documentary specialists in Africa that I love to work with is someone called Onye Ubanatu. For 2 years, before I ever said a single
Yeah.
word to Onye,
Okay.
I just saw one of his work online. And I remember saving it in my saved on Instagram, actually, saving it in my saved folder on Instagram. I was like, one day I'm
Hmm.
going to work with this guy. And then for a long time, I was always just
Yeah.
watching what he was doing, how, his angle of shots. I saw that, oh, this person aligned with the way I love to do, my video shoots, my documentaries, and things like that. And finally, when I finally had something to do, where I had full control over
Mm-hmm.
who I was to bring on board, I sent him a message and I said, we are going to work together soon, or something of that sort. And
But
that's how we
yeah.
started working together. And I would say for a fact, we've produced some of the best documentaries, corporate documentaries together that Nigeria has ever seen. And that has opened doors, not just for him, but for me and the businesses that I've done these documentaries for. You get. But the way he went about his jobs, the way he went about, putting them out
Oh,
there,
beautiful.
despite the fact that I never ever interacted with it, I already knew I was going to work with this person. I wanted to work with him. And
Hmm.
thankfully, when we started working together, he
Hmm.
never disappointed. So his personal brand and the brand he had built off doing his
Hmm.
own work
Hmm.
is what led me to him. And he was always watching. He never knew I was watching. And I want to
Hmm.
believe that this relationship has been, quite
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
successful for him, and very beneficial for him, just as it has been beneficial for me.
Mutually beneficial. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's why I think
Yeah.
when I say, whether people are watching or not, just make sure that you stay true to who you are, you stay true to the values that people are expecting to see. And nature just has a way of rewarding hard work. It might be slow, but it will definitely get rewarded. But you also have to open your eyes
Wow.
out for opportunities.
Hmm. That's so. Yeah. 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 So beautiful. How can somebody who is in a corporate brand
Yep.
successfully build a personal brand? Because you've been both corporate and government. How can somebody in a corporate brand build a a personal brand as well? Because some people in corporate brand, they get opportunities off the back of their personal brand.
Okay.
How were you
So,
able to navigate that
there's a
in your own
reason why I
personal
really do not
experience, your
like
lived
speaking
experience? Yeah.
about my corporate career, um, vis-a-vis my personal brand. And I'll tell you why. A lot of times I think it is
Yeah.
luck, you know, and why I would say so is,
Hmm.
Paul, I have never ever, all through my career, from when I left school, ever applied for a
Hmm.
job that I held. Never, not for once. It's so
Nah.
interesting
Nah.
that every time,
Nah.
someone has written me that, oh, please send your CV to us. I find it very difficult, to apply for a job or to seek out a job. It has always been on the basis of what I've done or what they had seen that I've been headhunted into every single role that I've held. So, yes, some people will say that is deliberate,
Wow.
but I can't tell you for a fact because I have not even taken the time myself to break down, all the pieces and see how it all came together. Go ahead, please.
Can I add something to that, Ortega? Somebody once said that there are two types
True.
of luck. There is the birthed luck when a person is born into a certain family,
Exactly.
and then there's motion luck off the back of the things that you have done or you're doing. And then the guy says that you can increase the surface area
Very
upon
true.
which
I
luck
totally agree
lands
with that.
upon when you do a ton of excellent things. And then the universe just
I,
just
I
conspires
totally
to
agree
make your
because,
dreams a reality. I think
if you look
that's,
at it,
I don't know, that's
I was
what I
born
think is
in
happening here.
2007, 2008. I was working on 5 projects. I went in as an intern, to the German Agency for International Development, to work on, because I studied public health. And 3 months after getting in, I was given 5 projects out of 9 projects to manage as an intern. I was barely 20,
Hmm.
and this was a multi-million dollar project, multi-sectoral women empowerment program
Wow.
for the entire northeast of Nigeria, and that basically made me one of the top 4 people in a very large project with 9 different sub-projects under it. And it was shocking to a lot of people. They just couldn't understand. But when you looked at it, I put in a whole lot of hard work. I brought my own personal experiences to bear in doing the work itself. I was willing to ask questions. I was willing to, go the extra mile in doing that. Compared, we were about 7 interns that got in at the same time into the entire project. Yes, I was the only one that was given the opportunity to take such a senior role 3 months after
Hmm.
getting in. And then I remember Boko Haram started becoming an issue. And so I picked up my phone and I called
Hmm.
JT Bank, who had offered me a job straight out of school. And I refused because I didn't want to work with a bank then. And I said, "Oh, do you guys still have this role open? I'm in my degree at the moment." And they asked me
Hmm.
one simple question: Are you 26 yet? I said, "No, I was just about to be 21." And I said, "Oh, you can come in for a test." So I flew down to Lagos, did the
Hmm.
test, got into JT Bank. They said I had to go to training school for 3 months.
Hmm.
And we went into training school. At training school, you know, good, I mean, granted,
Mm-hmm.
I'm good academically, I'm not that bad. And then at training school, you would always see
Yeah.
me, despite the fact that it was an extremely intensive training school. I would always organize parties for my class, beach days,
Yeah.
and things like that. And,
Ah, come on, man.
some
Social
people will say, "Oh,
social
Tega,
currency.
to get into JT Bank, you have to score 65." All I needed to do was make sure that I passed that stuff. But the day different departments in the banks they come to training school to come and headhunt, and then for those that I don't tell, they go work in those departments. For others, the bank
Yes.
decides where they put them in. You know, the day they came, every time they come, you just see me, I'll just stay in class. I was not interested in any of that. But I
Yeah.
always knew that I wanted to work in somewhere that allowed me to express myself creatively. And the day that the person from the Corporate Communications and External Affairs
Yeah.
department came, I remember I was in class, I was just with my friends. Every other person went to the guy was sitting in the cafe. They went to the cafe to go and start pitching to him, to pitch to the other department heads that were there. And funny enough, everybody that went to meet that person told him one
Yeah.
thing, that they know the right person for his department. And he said they should call me.
Oh my God. This is
So
so
they called me
beautiful.
and I walked into the room. And his name was Femi Adeniran, by the way. He's currently, director for corporate communications and Airtel Nigeria. And Femi calls me and says, "Oh, young man, I hear that you are the one that is for my department." I said, "What department do you?" He said, "Corporate affairs." I said, "What do you do?" And he explained, "Oh, they do the whole 9 yards, branding, corporate communications, they sell everything." And I said, "Oh, okay. What would you like me to do?" And he says, And then that was just when digital and social media was starting, I mean, we were still using, what was it again? Not GPRS.
Yes. Yeah.
There was this funny to browse then. Yeah, it wasn't, this was even before BlackBerry was really big. I mean,
Was it
the
BlackBerry?
standard, you know. And they said, "Oh, can
Yeah.
you build a website?" I mean, I
Okay. Okay.
learned
Can't
how
remember
to build
though.
websites. I actually built the website that we're using in the German agency in that program then. I said, "Oh, I can write a bit of code." Oh,
That's
it's asked me,
first.
"Can you write?" And I
This
said,
is
"Oh, I
our
love to write
agency,
because I
man.
used to read a
Goodness.
lot." I said, "I love to write and I don't mind writing and this and that." And they said, "You have the job. After
Yeah.
training school, if you pass, you resume in my department." And that was it. I was later to find out, years later, that Femi was the same guy that came to Babcock with the brightest and best team, recruitment team from GT Bank to do the test. And I remember when they were doing the test then, sorry that I'm diverting and going into stories, but
Oh.
I'm just trying to explain to you. The funny thing was
No, you're
when
not
we
divert. I'm
came to
enjoying the
Babcock then
conversation.
during
Yeah.
our graduating week, and everybody went into the lecture theater for the test. I stood outside waiting for my
Yeah.
friends to finish because I really never wanted to work in a bank. I was the only one that did not walk into that hall, you understand, to take the test.
Yeah.
Every other graduating student were there. And then Femi, I just stood on the corridor watching them,
Hmm.
and in my head, I was just like, wow, see all these people because they want to work in banks. And this person, who later became my first boss, walks up to me. He never knew me from
Hmm.
anywhere and says, "Oh, young man, what are you doing here?" I said, "Oh, I'm just waiting for
Hmm.
my friends. Are you a part of this class?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Why are you not inside?" I said, "I don't want to work for a bank and I don't think I need to do it." And he advised me, said, "You know what? Just go in, do the test so that at least if you come out of school, you know how to do, this test and you know what to expect. Just go in and do it and, forget about it." So I went in, I did the
Yeah. Yeah.
tests, and lo and behold, by the time the results came out, I was the first to walk out of the hall still. I just rushed through it and walked out because, you know,
Hmm.
and by the time the results came out, I was on the
Last to
list
walk
of
in,
10
first to
out
walk
of
out.
almost 1,000 graduating students that were picked. All nine out of that 10, minus me,
Oh my
went to
goodness.
serve, with JC Bank. Nine out of the 10, I was the only one that didn't serve. So this is about 2 years later, after I was to serve,
Wow.
and then I'm meeting the same person. I even didn't recall who he was that day, but he knew, and he never told me,
Mm-hmm.
until much later. But that was how, I got into JT Bank. Getting into JT Bank,
Hmm.
thankfully, I had one of the best bosses in Femi. He was willing to encourage me and allow me to do as much work as I wanted to.
Oh,
Yeah, I was a
fantastic.
little bit stubborn and all that, and I gave him a lot of hell. Sometimes his wife would call me and say, "Don't
Beautiful.
kill my husband." You're giving him a lot of stress. But I was young and I just wanted to do great work. And I met a lot of great people at the same time. So you see, in building your personal brand, you can't always do it alone. You must be open to learning. You must be open to seeing, like I said earlier, seeing opportunities, and not just opportunities in terms
Yeah.
of yourself, seeing opportunities to collaborate with people, to build competence and capacity. And you must also have the right
Yeah.
character. You know, I never
Hmm.
knew why Femi
Hmm.
was asking if I knew all these things. When I got into GT
Hmm.
Bank,
Hmm.
I was
Hmm.
managing the
This is fair.
intranet, which was a communications platform for internal people. I met another good friend of mine, Rona, RJ May on Twitter,
Yeah.
who was, showed me the ropes. Her dad used to be one of the top editors of Guardian
Hmm.
before, he passed away then. And she was also a very beautiful writer. She's write for This Day,
Hmm.
Next 234. And she put me through the ropes. I could write prose in any way, but she taught me, or she showed me
Hmm.
the ropes for corporate writing, and all that. And before you knew it, I used to write almost all the speeches
Yeah.
that came out of GT Bank for the MDs, for my bosses, everything. You know, I can go into the archives today and you would see, and I know what my
Whoa.
writing is. You open the annual reports, the chairman statements, the MD statements. I used to start writing that. You And this was because also someone deemed it fit to trust
Beautiful.
me. Keyword trust, to do these things and that I'll deliver,
Hmm.
regardless of how old or young I was. It was all about, does this person have the
Beautiful.
character to do what he needed to do
Yeah. Yeah.
and, get where he needed to get to, without so much as him having to, chase me and look at my work and all those things. And that's the same thing I've always done everywhere else. I left JT Bank, I went to Wema Bank. I did
Yeah.
the rebranding there.
Yeah.
Who would have thought that a 24-year-old boy would have been
Yeah.
allowed the
That was
opportunity to
a lot of
lead,
work. Yeah.
corporate communications and digital for a bank that was always going down and needed only the best hands at that point in time to stabilize
Bank.
themselves and go into the next phase. And then
Mm-hmm.
even hand over a complete rebranding project and drop it in his laps and trust him to see it. And trust him. This was a 75-year-old bank
Yeah.
when I was leaving,
The bank is still
the
going
oldest
strong, man.
Nigerian
Hmm.
indigenous bank. And they trusted me to do that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
as much as I said it was luck initially,
Yeah.
or my career path had been luck,
Yeah.
you also have to look at I also did the right things. I I worked hard. I might not be the first to get to work. I was hardly ever the first
Yes.
to get to work, but my work never ever suffered. You understand? And that's another thing that I learned. You
Beautiful.
know,
Beautiful. Beautiful.
when you show
Beautiful. Some
certain things,
beautiful.
when your values are true, when you work hard, when you're trustworthy, when you have the competence, when you have the capacity, when you show capacity, and when you have, decent character, people are want to, excuse to an extent what
Luck
some may
happens.
deem your excesses, and they will trust you to always deliver
Yes.
on work that needs to
Yes.
get done.
Yes.
I agree fully,
Somebody once said that luck
fully,
is a residue of hard
fully,
work.
fully.
It's a residue of hard work. Wow. Think I know your time is very valuable. I'll just ask you two more questions now and I'll let you go. I'll let you go. What is the one book that you have recommended or gifted to people the most? Mine recently is the Almanac
One
of
little
Charlie
speak.
Munger. I'm going to get you that book. I've given it to a bank founder, someone that founded a bank in Nigeria. I've given it to two billionaires. I think I'm sending
Yes,
that book. It's a great
and
book.
it's one of the
Warren
wisest men
Charlie Munger just died.
in
Died
the
at 99
financial
years old. He's a
sector
very, very
world over.
wise man. I love him so much. One of the words. Can I tell you one of my favorite of his quotes? He said that he called it inversion thinking. He said, "Do not ask yourself how am I going to have a great relationship, get married or whatever. Say, ask
Valid
yourself, what are the
advice.
top 5 things that would destroy my relationship and do
Valid
the
advice.
opposite?"
Valid advice.
Oh my God, he's so smart. Valid. The guy said, "Do not disrupt anything that is compounding unnecessarily." Say, and money is not the only thing that compounds. Your skills, your
It
talents,
has.
your network. Think of the network you have today. What's in the network you started with? It has compounded.
It has.
The
And the
people you
beautiful
met
thing is
in the
that
past, they
I
become
never
bigger
said this, but
people.
you have to be
It
also
has
be very, very
compounded.
deliberate about your network. Extremely deliberate. Do not be afraid of, cutting out those things that do not
Hmm.
help you. Talk
Yeah.
about respectfully. Let people know where you stand on issues.
Yeah.
Do not be seen to be the kind that's dilly-dallies when it comes to who is around
Yes.
you, what is around you, and how intentional you are about that.
Mm.
Because it always compounds. Like I said, whatever you do or whatever you not do, whether or not people are there,
It
has
does.
a compounding effect on your life now or in future. And that all counts
It
into your
does.
personal
It
brand,
does.
which is something that a lot of
It does.
people
It does.
do not pay attention to. The person who was my boss at the German agency ended
Mm.
up, on my
Mm.
own recommendation, being, the head of one of the largest, philanthropies in Africa, the ASR Africa, you know, because when we're looking for someone there, and I was being recommended to
Whoa.
head it, I said, no,
Wow.
this is what I love to do. I would love to stay on my lane. But if you want me to recommend someone, There's only one person I know that I can recommend who has done this and is still doing this and therefore has better experience than me on this. And he also has the right attitude and the right character. And when he came in for an interview and everything, it was a no-brainer. He was put in charge of a $100 million foundation, and that is
Beautiful.
the power of,
Beautiful.
not just networks or building the right networks, but also having the right personal brand.
Yeah.
If he hadn't built his personal brand that way, I would never have been
Very,
able
very,
to,
very powerful.
or
So what's
if
the
it was his
book?
personal like corporate or career brand, I
Yeah.
never would have been able to
Yeah.
recommend him for that role, or speak that confidently about him in that role.
That's right. That's right.
But when
Right.
it comes to books, I mean, I've read a lot of books. But the one
Exactly.
book I always
Exactly.
recommend people to read,
Exactly.
and this is going to be very, it might cause a little bit of ruffles amongst the listeners, is a book that is both loved and hated across the world. It's The 48 Laws of Power.
What's the book?
Yes. And I actually recommend that people read a whole lot of
Robert
the book.
Green.
Read that. And let me tell you why. It's very simple. You have to read those books, without your emotions in it. Perfect. The daily laws, 365. Every day there's a law for you
I've got his
every
latest
day.
book.
I mean, if you cannot read the 48 laws of power, this is a very good one because it's a compilation of different books and there's a law for you, in concise form for you to understand every day. And you see, a lot of people read these
Yeah.
books and begin to look at the books from a moral or
Yeah.
ethical perspective. No, dissociate yourselves from the morality or the ethical nature of those things and look at it from the context of what happens in the real world. In the real world, questions of morality and ethics,
Mm.
in as much as they should not be
Mm.
subjective, it is what it is. What is moral is moral. What is ethical is ethical.
Mm-hmm.
But the world has made those things subjective. You
Mm.
can see a war happening somewhere today, the same kind of war, the same kind of reasons, and
Mm.
it is
Mm. Mm.
moral to some people based on the way it is perceived. And it's happening in another place, and it's highly immoral
Mm.
and unethical,
Mm.
which should not be so. So if you look at the books from that point of view,
Mm.
you can extract life lessons and you can have, or you can develop your intuition so that you
Yeah.
see when people are doing these things and you are well positioned to be able to,
Mm-hmm.
know how to deal with it. Where people get it wrong is they take those things and start to apply it in an oppressor kind
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
relationship with people around them. That should not be the goal of reading such a book.
The way.
You should use it to be able to open your eyes more, to see and to understand.
Mm.
Because see, the world is so simple. A lot of things are based on frameworks. Human interactions are based on certain
Mm.
frameworks or foundations, and they remain the
Mm.
same regardless of what context they are. Anything that helps you to
Mm.
broaden your knowledge of human behavior, human interactions, human
That's right.
psychology, you know, is only good for you. So I hope more people will be able to open their
Mm.
minds and just extract value rather than seeking to use the lessons they get from that book to oppress others. Only then would you get, the benefits from the book the way you should get it. But for me, that's the book I would always recommend to people because it shows you people for who they truly are and how to, position yourself and how to
Wow.
also extricate yourself from certain difficult situations that you might never have been able to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. I love the way
Robert
it
Greene is a
breaks
very
down,
smart guy.
complex
I think he's writing
issues
another book right now. I
is
heard him say that in a
into very
recent
simple
podcast.
things.
His last book, Human Nature. Yes, it's very smart. Yes. He gets it. 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 Wow.
Thank you very much.
But I don't know what to say. I
I
want to
know
say
we
a big
said we were
thank you
talking
for
about
coming on the podcast
personal
today.
branding, but I hope,
We had a
the
great
experiences I
conversation.
shared can help you finally draw a line, can help people draw a line between
Yeah,
my personal brand or what they see as my personal brand and how it has been shaped. I mean, I didn't think this was
a
going to
lot.
be a theoretical, where we're talking about what is
Yeah.
personal branding and all that. No,
Yeah.
I want people to see my life, see how I've been able to navigate life itself, and be able to draw their own lessons. And I'm always open for further
Yeah.
clarification or further feedback. If anyone has
Yeah.
feedback or anything, to share, whether on your platform or mine. Yes, please.
Yeah. But so, just one more question. Somebody may say, okay,
So
how do you
you
deal with
must.
challenges? Because we have peaks and valleys in our lives. We've all faced them. How do you deal with those kinds of challenges? How do you bounce
So
back? How are
in
you
navigating life, I have
anti-fragile, as it were?
a
How do you
very
deal
simple
with
framework.
challenges? What's that?
It's called risk, rewards, and opportunities.
Good.
And also responsibilities rather than opportunities.
Hmm.
So you see, everything you do is a risk. Every single thing. You can never determine the outcomes of whatever you do. Sometimes the best laid
Hmm.
plans fail. But that's what I'm coming to.
So what
So
if
I
the what
said
if the
risk.
what if the
You have
upside
to acknowledge
is
first
higher
that
than the
everything you do is
downside?
a risk.
Do you still go ahead?
You
Hmm.
also have to acknowledge
Hmm.
also that for everything you're
Hmm.
doing, there is a reward. The
Hmm.
reward could be positive or negative. Two things. So we've spoken about risk, we've spoken about reward.
Hmm.
But the
Hmm.
most important part of this framework is responsibility. Regardless of the reward or the outcomes of that risk that you've taken,
Hmm.
whether it's positive or negative, what is the outcome?
Hmm.
And are you ready to take responsibility for that outcome? Good or bad, regardless.
Good or
That's
bad?
what I live by. If the outcome is good, you take the wins, but do not
Hmm.
linger in it because it could, distort the way you approach other things. If the outcome is bad, because you're already prepared for it, knowing fully well that the risk you
Hmm.
took could lead to a negative outcome, it's easier for you to quickly dust yourself off your feet. Yes, sometimes you cry, sometimes you feel down and all that. But because hey, this thing is going to work regardless, one way or the other, it has worked in the past, you must be willing to, quickly get back up on your feet and start to look for the next thing or start to trying to fix it. But do not linger either in, despair if it goes negative or in your wins. There's always something next that has to be done. Take the wins, take the
Hmm.
losses, and move on with your life. If you follow that in risk, reward, responsibility, I believe that 70% of your issues, in dealing with challenges or in dealing with wins would have been fixed. And that's how it's always worked for me. Some people feel sometimes that, oh, Tega, you know, you just have miracles happen to you even in the worst of times. But no, I don't think they are just miracles. It's my approach to those things. And like I always
Hmm.
say, the universe has a way, God has a way of,
Hmm.
rewarding or making up for things that happen to you. As long as you keep your focus, as long as you're diligent in,
Yeah.
doing whatever it is you're doing, and as long as you
Yeah.
work hard towards outcomes. It might not be immediate, but some way, somehow, either the lessons you take from what you've done, or, there's just an outcome that just, works for you. It comes into
Hmm.
place sometime now or in the future. So keep calm. And like my current principal has said during the campaign, and no fuck on ballet.
So
Everything works for
powerful.
good in the end.
Hmm. This is so powerful. This is so powerful. You're talking. This is what this is just like how an investor thinks. Risk, reward, opportunities. I'll take I like quotes, right? So there's a quote I've been meditating on recently. In fact, I told my children, my sons this morning, and my wife when we were praying. They said, "Like, Daddy, you've been talking about this quote all week." I said, "I've got to say it." The guy says that the limit
Hmm.
of my language is the limit of my experiences. I thought that was deep. I couldn't get that quote off my head. The limit of my words is the limit of my experiences. From studying you seriously, I've seen that your words have created a lot of experiences for you. Take a talk to us about the power of developing communication skill, because they say that until the lion can talk, every story will glorify the hunter. Why is that important? Communication and
So you
constant
see,
communication, and
never
why is it
discount,
important?
your experiences. Never ever. This world is a matrix. Your life is a matrix. But our experiences are also shaped by how we relate in the moment to them. You know, they say communications is the bedrock of everything, whether interpersonal relationships, whether business or whatsoever. So the least you can do for yourself to help
True.
yourself
Spot on.
is to understand the basics of communication. You know, understand non-verbal communications, understand verbal communications. If you've not learned them before, go, download, learn online or seek tutors to teach you, you know, get mentors, get experienced people to teach you how they've always navigated these things. And then start to build something that is unique to you based on these frameworks that have worked for other people. And
To you. Yeah.
always be open to take lessons from your own experience, no matter what the outcome is, whether positive or negative. Because that builds you for the future, that builds you for new experiences.
Or negative, yeah.
I hope you're getting me. So communications is not, oh, no, I mean, you must know
Powerful.
what to say, when to say, how to
Totally.
say, where to say, or even where to keep quiet. You must also be able to read the other party. Communications is a psychological game. You're asking yourself, okay, what does this person mean? What is this person saying? What has this person left unsaid? And you also need to know when to ask for clarity.
Come on now.
You also need to know when to leave things by the side, based on certain cues that might not just be available to the untrained eye. If there is one skill that you have to learn, especially in business
Eyes, yes.
or in
Yes.
your job or in your career, if there's one skill that I think everybody has to learn, it's communications. Because it can be the difference between doing what is expected and doing what you think was expected but it was wrong.
Take, can I give you an example of this morning? It happened this morning. First of all, I saw a quote. The man said that oftentimes we think communication has happened, but it hasn't happened. So my two sons called me this morning, my 15 and 14-year-old son. Oh, daddy, we forgot our bicycle lock. Can you bring it to the gas station close to our school so we can lock our bicycle when we get to school? I hopped into the car, ran to meet them. I took only the key. They said, no, daddy, it wasn't the key. It was the lock itself. As I was driving back home, I saw this thing called communication. It's so powerful. Imagine if I had asked, or if they had overemphasized that is not the key itself. We mean the main thing.
And that's why,
so it's so powerful.
Tell you that those who move
it's
up
so
the
powerful
or quickest are those who are able to ask the right questions. So learn to ask right. And asking questions is not just asking any kind of questions.
Yes,
and
sir.
yes, sometimes you ask questions that you may look stupid, but it's better to look stupid and learn than not to know at all. And I hope you get it. Exactly. Because you'd have saved time, you'd have saved resources, you'd
Not to
be a
execute
more
the wrong
knowledgeable
thing.
person,
Yes.
at the end of the day. But not too many people ask questions. Not too many
Spot
people
on.
even know
Spot
how
on.
to ask
Spot on.
questions. But I'd rather even just ask questions, whether you know how to ask them or not, than keep quiet and actually be a fool in your execution. Yep. Yep. 100%.
better.
100%.
In fact, selling is about asking questions,
100%, because it helps
not
you to
even
understand,
vomiting words.
the client better
The greatest salespeople
and
are
their needs
great at
better.
asking
Without asking
questions.
questions, you just imagine and assume. And that's why they say, even in marketing and branding, research is the basis of everything we do.
Ha!
And research could be structured or could just be, even as we're having a conversation like this, just asking questions about this or
Yeah,
that. It's also part of research. It's the framework of
that's
everything we
right.
do in the
That's
marketing,
right.
sales, or
That's right.
communication space.
That's so powerful.
My brother, thank you very much. Hopefully, I hope we don't.
Ha! What a conversation. This is gonna bless a lot of people, man. I really love the energy.
Oh, okay.
I love the vibe. I'm gonna share it this weekend. I'll send you the link. It will be on YouTube. It will be on Spotify. It will be on Apple Podcasts. It will be on every podcast platform
Oh,
all over
nice,
the world.
nice.
And I'll also share the link to my 15,000 subscribers to my email newsletter
Thank you very much,
and my
brother.
WhatsApp
Thank you
community.
very much
So
for
it's
calling me on
heavy
that.
distribution going on here. So thank you. Let me pause it and then I'll just with you a little bit before you go. Let me stop the recording so that it's officially stopped. Then I can now just